I was doing everything right, working hard, meeting expectations, building a career I thought I wanted. But deep down, I felt like I was suffocating in a box I didn't even realize had built around me. Does that sound familiar? That's why I had to bring you this week's episode of From a Woman to a Leader. So, hi everyone. My name is Limor Bergman Gross. I'm your host in From a Woman to a Leader podcast. My background is tech. I used to work in tech for over 20 years in software development and in leading engineering teams and organizations. And for the past 5.5 years, I coach women in tech who are ready to step into leadership, speak up, and grow with confidence and clarity. And this episode and this podcast, From a Woman to a Leader, is for you, women in tech, to support you, to help you, to inspire you. And in this episode this week, I speak with Betsy Pepine. Betsy is a powerhouse entrepreneur, Wharton MBA, and best-selling author of Breaking Boxes. And her story is more than just success on paper. It's about what happens when you realize the labels, roles, and mindsets you have outgrown, and how to find the courage to create a life and career on your own terms. Betsy and I talk about the invisible boxes women often live in and how to name them, navigating reinvention and identity shift in midlife and leadership, why redefining success is essential for personal freedom and fulfillment. And Betsy's insight will challenge you, inspire you, and honestly might shift something deep inside you. So are you ready? Because it's time we all start breaking our own boxes. So let's dive right in. Hi, Betsy. How are you? Such a pleasure having you here today.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Yeah, I really love the room where you're at. For those who see us, like a great setup that you have. And behind you, I see your new book, Breaking Boxes.
Yes.
So maybe share a little bit about that. I mean, what kind of led you to writing that book?
Yeah. I found myself, I'm 56 years old. I found myself in my mid 40s, despite having success in my businesses. I'm a serial entrepreneur and I have a lot of businesses and I've been so blessed in that way. I found myself increasingly unhappy and frustrated with myself that I felt unhappy and honestly didn't even feel that I was worthy of being unhappy. I just felt like there's so many people not as blessed as I am. So how do I have the right to be unhappy? And but once I worked through that with myself, I started journaling and meditating and doing yoga and going to therapy, doing bioenergetic work, a whole bunch of different modalities to uncover why it was that I was feeling this unrest. And the central theme was this feeling of confinement throughout my life, where I felt at times I was doing things or in situations that I did not want to be in because of external forces. So, like, for example, in my family, I felt a lot of pressure to be a physician. Everyone in my family is a physician. I grew up working in the hospital alongside my father. There was just the expectation that all of his daughters would be physicians. And that wasn't for me.
Yeah.
For a long time, that identity, it was really difficult for me to come to the realization that that was not going to be my identity, or I wouldn't be happy. So even though I didn't, it's not like I became a physician and then exited out of that career, but I did stay in the healthcare profession. My first whole career was a decade in the healthcare field because of kind of placating that familial not request, but just expectation that I was going to be a physician. And so there was boxes like that throughout my life, but it was not only things based on my family, but perhaps things based on my industry that I was in, boxes I felt like based on my gender, the roles I played, the daughter, the wife, the husband, or the aunt, the sister, what is a good wife? What does the good wife mean? What is a good mom? All these things that society and friends and peers tell you, and you kind of become indoctrinated into that. So I wrote the book as a series of stories about all of the boxes that I found myself in. And I put myself in boxes too. This is not just me as a victim. I'm very much to blame, not blame, but, I own that I also put myself in boxes, and not all boxes are bad. Some boxes serve us at certain periods of our time in our life. And some boxes probably never serve us. Some boxes I find myself in, they serve at one point in my life, but then I stay in it. I don't move on. And then it can become a little bit detrimental to my well being. So that is what the impetus of the book was from.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned you felt confined and based on like either expectations or external forces or internally, what I'm
Mhm.
hearing from you, like,
Mhm.
I actually, when we talked earlier, I mean, I realized that I have a box I'm trying to break from.
Mhm.
This box is about employee versus entrepreneur mindset
Mhm.
because I grew up in a middle class family. My parents worked for one employer, actually, each one of them in their entire career. Kind of, that's the only way to make a living. I mean,
Mhm.
that's kind of, I was conditioned that way. And that's kind of what led me to my career. But over the past 5 years, I'm trying to break from that box.
Mhm.
The thing is, I realize it's a process. It's not something that happens overnight, at least not for me.
Well, shifting your identity cannot, I don't think it can happen overnight because it took so long for that identity to be built, right?
Yeah.
So it's going to take a while.
Yeah, definitely.
I kind of felt that my father was the same way. He's 83 and he's still in the place of employment that I was in when I was 5. I'm 56. So he's
Yeah.
been there for 51 years. And that was the mindset too. And entrepreneurs were kind of like these rogue characters that, kind of maybe irresponsible, couldn't settle down in a job. That was kind of the mindset, I think, in terms of me growing up. But when I was an employee for the first decade of my work life as an adult, but I got laid off. And that made me very much realize that's not the stable, safe job. I felt very confident in my own abilities and my own ability to create value. And when I got laid off, I wasn't, it was an unexpected layoff. We were working for a pharmaceutical company, or I was, and the drug did not get FDA approval. So they let the
Yeah.
whole department go. But then I realized, wait a minute, there's not as much certainty as I thought there would be in being an employee. And
Yeah.
I felt a lot more confidence knowing I'll never fire myself. I would always be employed if I was working for myself. So that helped me getting laid off helped me shift from that employee mindset and identity to an entrepreneur.
Definitely. I mean, I think there's a false sense of security and
Mhm.
predictability in being an employee. And, well, I don't feel like there is any security or, no one can guarantee anything.
Mhm.
And maybe for our parents'
Mhm.
generation, they had more security because they worked in jobs that kind of
Mhm.
it was expected someone to work until retirement
Mhm.
in one place. And nowadays it just doesn't exist.
I think the other thing is, entrepreneurship wasn't really a thing, but 30, 40 years ago. I mean, yes, you had business owners, but
Yeah.
when I was in college, when I was in graduate school, I went to have an MBA. There were no courses in entrepreneurship. That wasn't a word that was thrown around nearly like we do today. And
Yeah.
a lot of it, I'm sure, has to do with we have internet now. Everyone has
Yeah.
laptops, and that wasn't the case when I was going to school. And the ability to work remotely and create whole jobs just on your computer. And I think COVID also helped that. COVID helped a large cohort of people realize they can make it on their own. So I think in at least my parents' era, it just wasn't a model for them. It wasn't something that you considered after you went to high school or college. Do I want to be an entrepreneur? I doubt very few people at my parents' age, they're 83, had that choice or even considered that.
Yeah. I think now it just we live in a different world, and there are so many possibilities that
Mhm.
never existed.
Yeah.
Everyone with a keyboard and internet connection can make money.
Right. And be anywhere.
And be,
My daughter lives in Australia and she went on like literally a 3-month journey vacation, not vacation, but travels. And she worked the whole time. And it was just amazing to watch and witness. And I was like, my goodness, these opportunities, but that did not exist when I was growing up.
absolutely, I think this is incredible.
Yeah.
I really much like it. So when you wrote your book, I mean, I wanted to kind of ask you, what did you find out? I mean, what are some common boxes that many people are confined
So
at?
the common ones seem to revolve around your family of origin, your religion, your friends and peers, your social connections, your industry, your gender is huge one is your gender, probably the biggest one. Those would be I would say, the biggest ones that people have shared with me that they
Hmm.
encountered. And the main reasons I've found that people stay in boxes that no longer serve them. Well, one, sometimes they're just not even aware that this is a box that they can exit, that there are options outside of what they're currently doing. So that's a big thing. But once they become aware, sometimes, and myself included, still choose to stay in boxes that no longer serve. And that usually is a result of three main things: fear of failure, fear of change, and fear of loss. And so what I like to do is try to break that down. Like when I'm facing those, when I feel myself facing resistance, which of those fears is it? I like to write things down. When you write things down, it becomes a lot less scary than when it just manifests in your mind.
Yeah.
But I've worked through the fear of failure one, which is probably the biggest one for people. That's just been a mind shift for me over years, and I truly don't. To me, that's just another box. It is a mental construct, like all these other constructs. You don't see these constructs in the other animal kingdoms. It's only in the humans that we do this to ourselves. So failure is just something that we put mentally, behaviors or outcomes, into this box. And I choose not to have that box in my life. For me, when I look at a path, I think, okay, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is the outcome is not what I had hoped. So I have to pivot. And I will have learned something, a great lesson. I don't know what that lesson is right now, but I will have learned a great lesson from the experience I will take with me for the rest of my life. That's worst case scenario. That doesn't seem so bad to me. And research has shown worst case scenarios only happen 3% of the time. So it's like we worry so much about something that probably won't happen. And even if it does, it's not so bad. So for me, the fear of failure one, it really doesn't enter my mind anymore. The fear of change, that's a big one too, because I just think humans are resistant to change. Even when we know change is going to be better, it's just change induces stress on our system. I practice getting out of my comfort zone every day. I have a daily habit tracker, and every day I put myself in a situation that I am uncomfortable. Sometimes it is literally only the cold shower I take every morning, because I know that might be the only thing that's going to make me very uncomfortable that day. But the more you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, the more comfortable you become in those situations.
I for sure agree with that. I mean, this is something I try to practice as well. I don't take cold showers. Maybe I should. I heard that it's actually good for you. Uh, so definitely, I mean, I feel like because usually when you do something that you're uncomfortable with, it's also something that maybe you're scared of, and
Right.
maybe there is some fear of failure, right? I mean,
Yeah.
for sure. Can you give us an example of what can be a daily, other than cold showers, especially for women, because we talk here about women mainly? What can be like a daily or something simple that women can do in order to get
Mhm.
that habit of being uncomfortable?
Well, the cold shower is a great one because
Yeah.
anybody can do it. And it really does shock your system. I mean, it's a little, especially because I live in Florida, which is a hot state. I do like heat, but you can just observe. I always say I try to have a mind of curiosity. So you just observe, okay, how's my body reacting? Okay. I'm safe. I can do deep breathing exercises. So it's a really nice controlled setting that you can work through how your body is responding to something that's incredibly uncomfortable. And it's just, to me, almost like a muscle. And then that memory comes back when you find yourself in other situations. But it could be just calling, like I'm in sales. So calling that customer you don't want to call. Something either went wrong or their relationship is turning or whatever. I don't know what it is, but it could be making a phone call a day to somebody that it's going to be a little awkward or uncomfortable, or even just you haven't kept in touch with them for a while and you feel badly about that, or something's making you uncomfortable picking up that phone. So it could be something as simple as that. It could be talking to a stranger. That's an easy one. Make yourself talk to a stranger once a day. How difficult would that be? So those are for me in my environment, those would be the easy ways for me to get out of my comfort zone. I also, like bigger things, like I was just asked to speak at something and I could tell, I was like, oh, this is going to be stressful. The audience it's a very large, probably the largest audience I've ever spoken in front of. It's not a customer group that I normally speak in front of. So that's a little unfamiliar. And if my first thought is to say no, I make myself say yes
I
because
love it.
I just know I only grow when I'm outside my comfort zone. I don't grow in my comfort zone. As comfortable as it is, I'm not growing.
I love it. Yeah, I actually relate to what you're saying about public speaking because I just submitted yesterday. I try to find like events that are kind of relatable to me and submit talks. That's also kind of a practice of getting rejection, which we dread a lot, right? I mean, just submitting, and hopefully,
Yeah.
I will get an opportunity to do public because I feel like public speaking is really checking a lot of boxes.
Hmm.
At least for me, like it's being uncomfortable, it's doing something maybe, oh, I have an idea about what I'm going to talk about, but I don't know exactly what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I
I
love
think
it.
it's a great way to be uncomfortable. Maybe it's a big step of being uncomfortable, but I feel it's really good for anyone.
Yeah. Well, and that fear of rejection, that reminded me of, I have two daughters, and when they were growing up, I really tried to um, hone in on wanting them to not be afraid of rejection. And I don't know if you know Sarah Blakely. Sarah Blakely is this billionaire in our country, billionaire who created Spanx, which is a product for women, and then just now created Sneaks for women. Anyway, every growing up around the dinner table, instead of asking how was your day, her dad would ask each of his children, she was one of them, how did you fail today? And
Wow.
he wanted them because he knew, and I truly believe the most successful people have failed the most.
Yeah.
They just don't stop. And when my daughter was growing up, I remember I was dropping her off to go audition for a play at a brand new high school. She entered the school yet. School was going to be starting in a couple of weeks, but they were having the auditions before. And so she didn't know anybody and she was scared to death. And I get to the parking lot and she's like, I'm not going in. I was like, I remember thinking, okay, do I take her home or could this be a great life lesson? And so I said, Maria, I said, I will sit here as long as you need me to sit here. So we sat for about 5 minutes and I said, Maria, I said, I will take you home. But if we go home right now, you have a 0% chance of getting a part in this play. If you walk in those doors and you audition, you have at least a small chance. We don't know how big of a chance. We don't know these people at all, but at least you have a chance. You have put yourself in the arena. That is success. We cannot manage outcomes. We can't control the outcomes, but we can control if we walk through that door. So we stayed in the car for like another 5 minutes. And then she got out of the car and went into that audition. And I truly probably have never been so proud of my daughter in my life. And she came out beaming. She said, I don't know if I got anything, but the confidence that gave her, that she knew that she had won, whether she
Yeah.
gets the part or not, she tried. And so when you said, with the speaking and stuff and rejection, it's like you put yourself in the arena. They can reject you. You can't control that, but you gave it a shot. I loved
Yeah.
it.
And I think, by the way, this is a great story. And I try also to distill in my kids that failure is part of life and this is a way to grow.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the society and the school system in particular is really, I mean, I don't know how to say it nicely, but it's screwing us up because from very young age, we are conditioned to want to succeed in school and we are graded.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we do has a grade and there is pass and there is fail. And if we fail, that's not a good thing. And what my mom is going to tell me, when I'm going to come with the report card and there will be something that is an F
Mm-hmm.
or maybe a C,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, and this is, I feel, a lot of the problems start
Mm-hmm.
where we are being graded and
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of become like, okay, I have to succeed. Otherwise, it's a bad thing.
Well, it's funny. I wrote about that exact thing. That's one of the stories in my book about being the good mom. And when my girls they're a year apart, kindergarten and first grade, I recognized that I cared too much about their grades to the point where there's supporting the children, I think, and then doing the work for the children. And I wanted them to get straight A's. That was very important to me. And I don't know what woke me up, but literally one day I'm like, this has got to stop because I recognized I was doing it. If I asked myself, and I did, I remember vividly saying, what is the goal here, Betsy? is it the goal for them to have straight A's when they get out of school? Or is the goal for them to know and be confident that they can do anything on their own? And that was my goal. So then I said, I don't care about to myself, I didn't tell the kids, but I told myself, I don't care what grades come home. I want them to do it all. I want them to own it. I want them to be proud. And I went cold turkey and I stopped participating. I mean, I made, I would ask, when are things due one time, that I would remind them one time, and that was it. I wouldn't, if they forgot something at home, I wouldn't take it into school. I wanted them to own what they could control. And I got a lot of criticism by the way I raised my kids because of that. But they're 25 and 26 now, and they are the most independent, self-sufficient, thriving young adults that I know. And I truly believe it's because I really released the idea that they had to have a certain mark on their report cards, because I knew that wouldn't serve them. My parents really helped. I remember they helped us so much through school. When I went off to college, I wondered, can I do this on my own? And I'm like, I don't want my kids to ever question their ability to figure it out on their own.
I love that story. Basically, you took away their control and you gave the responsibility for your kids. Eventually, you let them figure things out themselves through, I'm sure that they stumbled or maybe failed along the way, right? I mean, because they forgot something at home or whatever. I mean, and through that, they learned, like, okay, how important is it to me, and am I going to get the responsibility?
Yeah, I remember having to call the school once because one of my daughters had turned in late homework several times, and she kept getting A's on it. And I called the teacher. I'm like, why are you sending home an A? Her homework was late. She's like, oh, she's a good kid. She's bright. I said, no. I said, that's not the real world. If you turn in something late, there's got to be a consequence. And I think sometimes the schools also are part of the, the problem.
I think they're part of the problem because they also want everyone to succeed, because it means like, oh, the school is good if they're
they
producing.
Get more funding, they look better. Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
It's a systematic problem. And I think that another box that we have, and I think this is like one book that kind of opened my mind, like many years ago, was Rich Dad Poor Dad, because it's about, we're conditioned that we need to get good grades, and then we need to go to college, and then we need to start to work as an employee. Like, there's a very, very defined path. But the thing is that, and I'm actually trying to break out of that box now, myself, for my kids. Is this really the only path, or is it what they want? And how important is it if they're going to get great grades, and everything, versus maybe they're going to have other experiences? And is it really important? Because do they really want to go to college? Or if so, do they have to go to the best college or to the best program? Like, what does it say about them? Is that going to be a measure of success in their life?
Yeah, I agree. I do think that's changing, at least in our country. I know growing up, that was definitely, you're going to college, for my family, you're going to graduate school. But I do believe nowadays that is not the sentiment of a lot of people with raising their children now, because they're seeing that you don't need. I think that the best thing a college education did and does is not the actual learning of the classwork, but learning how to live with other people and interacting in a more controlled setting than the big wide world.
Yeah.
I think that is what the benefit of college is. But a lot of kids don't go away to college anymore. They're doing it remote, so that you lose that whole component of what I believe was the true learning in a college setting.
Yeah.
The actual coursework, when I look at least in my industry, coursework versus real life experience, far and away, real life experience will serve them so much better than a college degree.
Yeah, and I think that now we are in an information age, right? I mean, the information is so accessible like it never was before. And I think there are a lot of free courses also universities offered.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like you can...
And even if it's not a course, I feel like anything you can find out how to do online.
Yeah, you can learn anything. And if not, ask AI how to do it for you.
Yeah.
Like my daughter, my daughter likes to bake, and she said, oh, Mom, I took a recipe that you showed me from a recipe book, right? I still have books. But I wanted to do the chocolate chip cookies with peanut butter. So I asked ChatGPT, how would they... And once she did it, it's like, oh, now I'm going to only work with ChatGPT, and I'm going to make up whatever recipes that I want.
Yeah.
It's like,
Great.
I'm thinking, this is great. So going back, let's go back to the boxes. Like, let's say you figure out, you're in a box and you want to
Mhm.
overcome that. So do you have any strategies of how you can take some steps into break from a box that you're at or something that is holding you back?
Yeah. So it depends on what fear you have. So if it's the fear of, like, sometimes people fear loss. So loss of financial security. So take steps towards that. Nowadays, it's so easy to combat that one because, like we've talked about, we have the access to the computer. We can work remotely. There's the gig economy. You can drive for Uber or Amazon. There's so many ways to make extra money if you need money as you pivot to your true calling. So
Yeah.
basically identifying that if your fear is fear of loss of social connection, and that you will have when you start moving. I'm sure you probably experienced this when you went from an employee to an employer or self-employed. Your social connections change. Know that, be prepared for that. That's not necessarily bad, but just shore up newer social connections in anticipation of losing ones that, you've outgrown. The relationship has served its purpose and you're both moving on, and you're moving into a direction where you're going to introduce yourself to new people that can help you grow. So start shoring up and being intentional about shoring up those connections. If you're fearing a loss of social status, which that is also, sometimes you're moving from a profession that's highly esteemed to one that perhaps either society or family tells you it's not as worthy.
Yeah.
For me, that's an easy one because I know that's my ego talking and not me. And so I just say, Betsy, put your ego on the shelf and you got to move forward. So that's how I combat that one. So identify what fear you have and then strategies to overcome that fear. And then I like to just break down any big goal I'm setting for myself. I just break it down into very, very, very small steps. I mean, it literally could be when I set out to write the book, I was like, okay, I can commit to an hour a day of writing 5 days a week. I knew I could do that. So my book took a year. I mean, a lot of people write a book in 3 months, but I knew I knew that would not work for me. But I
Yeah.
knew in my mind I could get up an hour early every day, 5 days a week for a year. That got me about a page a day, and that would get me a book. So breaking it down into something that's manageable for you on a daily basis as a daily practice, and then
Yeah.
start moving in that direction. I think the other thing is I always like to get mentors in the area that I'm moving towards, people who are already there and maybe from afar, and they may not have the time to formally mentor me, but I can watch them and learn from them. And then if I can get a local mentor that's a couple steps ahead of me, I like to do that as well and learn from them.
Definitely. Yeah, I've been thinking about writing a book myself. I'm a little bit intimidated by it
Hmm.
just because it seems like, wow, it seems like a lot of investment
Hmm.
of time.
Hmm.
Yeah, but it's definitely something that I'm playing in my head. And yeah, I thought about, I reach out to basically women that
Yeah,
wrote a book and
exactly.
they know
Yeah, we
mentor,
don't have to
coach.
reinvent the wheel. It's all out
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and what they learned and they can maybe help me. So yeah,
Mhm.
definitely relate to that. So before we end our call, I mean, tell us a little bit what you do today and how can our listeners find you?
Yeah. Well, today my main job is I have several real estate companies. I have a real estate brokerage. I have a property management company. I have a title company. I have a real estate school, and then I also run a nonprofit. We help build homes for cost burden families that will never use our services on the other side. But I wanted to provide a way to give back to the community that has been so generous with us. But I am on all the social channels with my name, Betsy Pepine. I also have a website, which is betsypepine.com. And then my book is on all the, online platforms, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the major online
Yeah,
book retailers.
perfect. And I'll put all the links there. Thank you so much, Betsy, for having a
Thank
great
you.
conversation with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the episode with Betsy. Before we wrap up, I wanted to give you a little sneak peek into next week's episode. And I wanted to ask you a question. Have you ever felt like anxiety was running the show, keeping you from asking for a raise, for taking a new opportunity, or simply just saying no? My guest next week, Denise G. Lee, calls this the hidden cost of people pleasing. And she is a healing and leadership coach who helps ambitious leaders untoggle the fears and all patterns that keep them stuck at work and in life. And in our conversation, she shares practical ways to quiet those inner voices, break the cycle of overgiving, and lead with confidence. So if you struggled, like I did, with self-doubt, overthinking, or that constant urge to make everyone else happy first, you won't want to miss this one. And before you go, if you like this episode with Betsy and the show, make sure to subscribe to From Woman to a Leader, share this podcast with a friend who needs it, and also let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear your feedback. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next Wednesday with this powerful conversation with Denise Gili. Thank you so much, and have a great day. Bye.